A surge in foreign trademarks means your fruit is about to get a lot more tasty.
So more trademarks in countries that aren't the US is going to equal more delicious fruit.
Yes, your fruit will get a lot more delicious as foreign trademarks increase. Let's get to it. Welcome to the Knock-On Effect. This is where we start with a thing you know and end up in a strange place. I'm Justine Underhill, and joining us today we have our guesser who defies all labels, Alex Rosenberg.
Hi.
And we have in person a very special guest, the professor himself, Roger Hurst.
It's good to be here again.
All right, now actually both of you will be taking on the role of guesser this week. So I'd like you to try your hand at seeing how we get from trademarks to tasty produce.
Shall I have a go?
Yeah, I think so, Professor.
So, there's going to be trademarks on a certain style of fruit. So bananas that are bent in a certain way. And they're going to say, you can't have that sort of bent or that sort of round. So people have to come up with different varietals of bananas and apples that are off trademark, which allows people to say, I've got 20 different types of apples and 4 different types of bananas. So variety goes up and flavors will go up because of that.
Okay, Alex, you have a...
I'm going to guess that, you sometimes you see these fruit combinations, like you get the pluotes or the, lobstercados or something like that, which is lobster and avocado grown out of the ground.
What?
Made that up.
Okay.
But you see different combinations. And so perhaps we'll get to trademark those combinations and we'll get to have a plethora of
lobstercados.
Sure.
Okay, well, that is far off. You were a little bit closer. I don't know, we'll see where this goes.
Okay.
You guys can get your grades at the very end. Okay, so we're gonna start, we start with a thing you know, but this is a little bit of a thing you might not know, which is trademarks, but specifically in China. Our favorite place.
Your favorite place.
My favorite place. Okay, so basically what's been going on is China's been having a huge push to trademark. Specifically, the US Patent and Trademark Office has been flooded in the past few years with Chinese applications, which is kind of something that you wouldn't expect.
So Chinese companies looking to get US trademarks for stuff. Okay.
Yes. So applications from China have grown more than 12-fold since 2013. 1 in every 9 trademark applications in the US is from Chinese applicant, which actually came as a surprise to people in the patent office. They didn't know what was going on until they discovered that Chinese governments, municipalities have actually been paying their citizens to trademark things in the US and trademark things abroad. So this has been a big push by the Chinese government. So in Shenzhen, specifically, they pay citizens as much as $800 per registered trademark.
So are there just like Chinese people inventing random stuff and
I mean, some of it's they're trademarking things that probably shouldn't be trademarked. But this is sort of part of a bigger push in China.
So they're not trying to clog up all the lawyers in the US to get them out of the way, because that's what's going to happen.
There have been some, if you want to go with nefarious reasons, people think they're doing it. That is one of the theories that is out there on the internet. But actually, so it's not just doing foreign trademarks, it's also trademarking within China itself. So trademark applications surged in 2017 by 55% from the year before, and the year before was already a record. So it's sort of like we're seeing record after record after record. And China has now 14.9 million active registrations overall. Guess how many the US has? So they have 14.9.
Active trademark registrations?
Yes, in China.
Right.
How many does the US?
Oh, I'm going to go for 2 million.
Very good, you got it.
Oh.
So, but I mean, that's
so easy
kind
as
of,
the professor.
But that's a huge difference that we're seeing. Okay, so now we have this little.
So there are many more trademark registrations in China than in the US?
And so this is part of a shifting tide that we're seeing. This is all within the past few years.
And China's starting effectively from zero, whereas the US has already built up a massive inventory of trademarks.
Right,
So it's just adding and adding with one starting effectively.
Exactly, and so this is sort of a big trend that we're starting to see. So now we have this trend. We're gonna put it to the side, put it in the oven, and we'll come back to it later. So now we're going to shift our gaze to a completely separate topic.
Okay.
I'm gonna show you 3 separate ads in a row, and I want you guys to guess what they're for, okay? So here we go.
Camping or exploring, spending time off the grid hanging with friends and family is always time well spent.
Hope springs eternal. a new energy awakens.
Okay, those ads were all for the same thing. So you want to take a guess as to what they were for?
So,
Again, they were short clips of the full ad, so you don't have all context. But take a guess.
An aloe vera style health drink.
Okay.
well, that's good. So it's a new energy awakens. It's going out, enjoying friends. And I saw they were drinking something. I'm gonna go. Well, so I have to go different than you. I'm gonna go something you inhale that just gives you a burst of energy.
Okay, so it sounds like something new and exciting, right? And I'll give you the product or the brand names for these, what they were selling. They were
Okay.
selling Sweet Tango, Jazz, and Pink Lady. Do you guys have any idea now?
Well, I do know that Pink Lady is an apple.
Okay, you got it.
Jazz.
Yes.
What jazz is?
Jazz is an
It's a
apple.
form of music.
No.
It is.
It's very popular here in the United States, Roger.
It's
Yeah, absolutely. But I think this could have been my first ever male perfume.
It's an apple. Alex. Okay, no. So those three are all apples, and actually, apple ads
right.
are becoming a huge thing right now. And it seems like it's like a fresh new thing that they're selling, which in some ways.
So
it is
that last guy was dancing around in a
was-
library about an apple?
for Pink Lady apples. He had pink socks on. He took a bite of an apple and it made him dance like that. But anyway, so it's kind of funny because a few weeks ago we talked about supermarkets and
Yes, we
shelving and how certain brands have to pay to get their items in the supermarket shelf or to be prominently displayed. And we had talked about whether or not there were specifically like produce that had brands.
Yeah.
And none of my research had showed anything about produce having brands. So it was kind of interesting that now that I dug into this topic, this is actually a rapidly growing field. Pun intended.
I did get that.
Yeah,
yes.
get it? Okay.
So,
Anyway.
so do you just have apples normally?
Well, that's what I thought. I thought they were just apples. I thought apples were
Granny
apples
Smith,
were
There's
apples.
Cockles, Pippins,
Macintosh.
Golden
There's so
Delicious.
many different. Okay, but
Millions.
when you think of the classic apple, what do you think of?
Granny Smith.
Okay.
I think a Macintosh, yeah.
Red-
or at Red Delicious.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is
Golden
it.
Delicious.
So no,
Red
red
Delicious is
delicious.
better.
So actually, we have some of that.
Oh, hey!
Hey, look at that.
apples.
Look at those.
So this is important because we cut these slices a
it's
little
Red
bit ago,
Delicious.
and you're gonna have to you'll taste some of these slices. We'll pick
Seriously?
this up. Yeah, they're a little brown, but that's
right.
important
right.
part of the story. Okay, but and I'll get your.
I'll
get your-
Should I start dancing around the room? or-
And this is not much. I mean, just before I came here, I was pruning my orchard, but I've got about 6 different types of apple tree. So this is
so you're familiar with these apples?
lots of different types. Yeah.
Yes. Well, okay, so we'll get your tasting notes in a second. So I want you to hold on, think about them while I tell you a little bit about the history of the apple. Okay, so these Red Delicious apples, these are apples of gas stations, of untouched cafeteria trays. These are,
Looks like an apple you might give your professor.
yes.
Like a cricket ball.
Exactly like that. There's a long history to that actually. But actually, this is the most popular, or was the most popular apple in the United States. And why was that? In the 1940s, this really took hold, specifically because it has a uniform shape and size. It doesn't bruise
Very
easily.
distinctive shape, by the
Very
way.
distinctive. Yeah, it's like this is an apple.
like a pepper. Yeah.
This is what an apple should look like.
It's more like an apple.
But it's also turns red before it's ripe, so that means it can be stored longer. It can be put on shelves. It can all around great for producers of the apple.
Wait,
I
sorry.
brought them here.
Can we just say on that point, it turns red before it's ripe. And
Yeah.
why is that helpful to
Well, because that
grocery
means
stores?
it can be picked earlier and it can actually be stored longer and still look good. They have very tough skins as well,
Right.
And so that means that hides any sort of nicks or anything else that happens as well. There are a bunch of things to this that just it looks very pretty.
Yes.
But what's the one thing I haven't mentioned?
The taste.
Haha, very good. Okay, so I'll get your tasting notes. What did you taste?
Mainly water. A little bit. It's sort of. It was quite a mild flavour.
It's almost like a cardboard kind of
It also kind of
flavor.
turned brown. We cut this just recently. It turned brown. It's kind of gross.
It's-
Okay,
yeah.
so common complaints: mealy, mushy,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess stuck in the teeth.
no flavor. So why did that
not
happen? It's not crisp. So in the 1960s and 70s, an apple was just an apple. If my apples tasted worse than your apples, it didn't really matter because they would all get mixed up together.
It's a simpler time.
It was a simpler time when apples were apples. It didn't matter because
When men were men and apples were apples.
Exactly. I'm so glad you're on the same page.
Yeah.
So growers were incentivized to cut costs, and it didn't really matter what happened to the inside of the apple as long as they could sell it. And so that meant that they basically bred them for their beauty over taste. Because also when you're in the grocery store, guess what? You can't really tell. How are you going to judge an apple? Like, oh, this looks like a good color.
Right.
It's nice and firm. So they bred them to be something that would be sold, but then they could cost elsewhere.
Anyone kind of cotton on Pavlovian style after about 4 or 5 attempts of eating these? They go,
I mean,
a bit samey.
apples don't have the best reputation, and I think it's because of Red Delicious. Like, if you offered someone apple is to me like a very low tier fruit. It's like no one's like apple, love apples, unless they're from like upstate New York and they have delicious apples. Like no, you know what I mean?
Well, what's been a big thing, or what this led to, these disgusting apples, and I feel bad calling them disgusting, but these apples, it led to the Great Red Delicious Bailout of 2000.
Oh, I want to hear about this.
Okay, so basically what happened was in 2000, Congress approved and President Clinton signed the biggest bailout in Apple history.
This is like his last act in office right before he pardoned
Well, they
Margaret.
snuck it in whilst the dot-com crash was
Yeah.
going on. They just snuck it in there, didn't they?
So basically what happened, so we have a quote from a New York Times article from the day. So, quote, "Nobody should feel sorry for us. We did this to ourselves," said Doyle Fleming, a lifelong apple farmer. "For almost 50 years, we've been cramming down the consumer's throat a red apple with even thicker skin, sometimes mushy, sometimes very good if done right, but a product that was bred for color and size and not for taste."
I love this Doyle.
Yeah. Well, and so this is sort of what happened. And so there was a lot of controversy over this bill because, like, why are we bailing out apple farmers that are making disgusting apples?
Right.
But it's really key because at the exact same time that all this was going on, this apple crisis was brewing, something very key happened, which was that Congress broadened legislation allowing universities to patent and commercialize inventions. Okay? And that specifically gave way to our next apple, the Honeycrisp.
Oh, I love Honeycrisp.
This is America's favorite apple in some ways. And even the way you responded to it is how many people respond to the Honeycrisp. So this is actually, I have here,
All right.
here we go.
Take your own.
Take my own, thank you.
I have
idea.
I have an apple patent here. So this is what an apple patent looks like.
Crunchy,
Yeah.
juicy.
Yeah, that's
Cleans
what.
the teeth.
But it's acidic. It has an acid, sugar.
So this is a patented
gorgeous.
apple. This is one of the first patented apples created by researchers at the University of Minnesota. Actually, I will say Honeycrisp cells are twice the size of other apples, which is partly what makes them so yummy and juicy and delicious. These apples garnered maybe twice the price as a regular apple. I mean, this is truly a first name brand designer apple. And I have a quote here from the man who invented the Honeycrisp,
Ooh.
David Bedford. He's the man who's responsible for it.
Good job,
He told
David.
Esquire magazine, quote, "I have absolutely never seen this price phenomenon with another apples," he said. "There are varieties that have garnered a 10% premium to standard pricing, and that's usually because they have a promotional campaign behind them." So with the patenting system, the university earned $1.30 for every tree that was sold. And eventually the patent brought in about $6 million.
What do you think it means that the bottom is pubescent?
What is that? Oh, is that
It's
is that one of the standards?
It says spinach green glossy on top, bottom is pubescent.
Ew.
is this-
I don't
is
know.
this more pubescent than this apple,
oh
Professor?
Oh my God.
I'm not sure I'm in any position to be able to answer that one, even if I could.
Let's move on. So the problem is, though, that patents expire. Okay, so this patent actually expired in 2008. And basically, right now, anyone can plant this apple tree, the Honeycrisp tree, which is why you actually might start to hear anecdotes about subpar Honeycrisps coming to market. Some have actually suggested the eventual decline of the Honeycrisp is inevitable because there's
Yeah, that one declined when
there's no standards in
Right.
place. So what we have going on.
there's no stand. So anyone can. I mean, if I sold this apple, say it is a Honeycrisp. Is that legal or
No,
what's
you couldn't do that. What you can do though is that if you make a subpar Honeycrisp, because Before, with the patent, the University of Minnesota had more control over who had the licenses and who could plant the trees.
Did David taste every apple himself?
Yeah, and make sure it's on par. So what we have right now basically is a race to make the next Honeycrisp.
Wow,
yeah.
interesting.
And so this is where we enter the world of the Zestar and the Sweet Tango and the Envy and the Rave and the Kissabelle and the Pink Lady and the Jazz, and actually a huge number of other apples, all part of something we call club apples. So you can be part of the club. So club apples are actually varieties that are not just patented now, but they're also trademarked. And they're controlled in such a way that only those part of the club, so club farmers, can sell them. And the key thing here is that the trademark never expires. So where a patent might expire, the trademark never does.
So what's the difference? The patent allows you to use these genes to make this apple, and and the trademark is the name of the apple, or?
Yeah, so actually the trademark is specifically the name of the apple. So we have some trademarked apples here if you want to try some of these. So we have these Jazz apples that I mentioned.
So could David have trademarked the name Honeycrisp if he really wanted?
He could have, he did not. And so that's why.
Good on David.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is what?
These are Jazz apples, and these are Pink Ladies. You can see it. But you know what's funny is that I brought these all in a bag, and I banged them up a little bit.
That's terrible.
The Pink Ladies got pretty banged up.
Okay.
But it just shows you that it's hard.
Pink Ladies in between those two.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Well, so I mean, things are being tweaked. It's actually very expensive. Oh, you're not a fan.
No, I don't like either of these.
Really? But that
It's just too acidic. It's too bitter.
And leaves a bit of a residue rather than a flavour. So
Yeah.
you get a bit of
Oh, wow.
kind of like stuff.
It's
stuck
a
in
little
your teeth.
mealy, and this one is
one.
disaster.
Wow.
This is-
Okay.
Worse than the basic, the comedy basic.
It's sour. I can see what it's trying to do, but it's not even coming close.
Well, paying to grow these apples is actually very expensive. So it costs $2,000 per acre in some cases. So just to be part of the club. And that leads to actually more marketing and promotion. And just so you guys know, the next hot apple to come out, there are already articles about it. It's the Cosmic Crisp. So the
Okay.
next celebrity apple is Washington State's Cosmic Crisp. It's coming out next year, 2019. There's a lot of buzz around it, and you can even see it has a pretty fancy website.
I think the artwork around that might be the highlight.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Is it going to be? But has there ever been? Here's a question. I hope I'm not getting ahead of ourselves. Is there any apple that sells for as much or is as widely revered as the Honeycrisp? Is this like the Muhammad Ali of apples?
This is.
And then everyone else is like, I can box too. I can also be a famous boxer, but no one's Muhammad Ali.
Right. There has yet to be an apple that I found that is as expensive as the Honeycrisp. And so that's sort of like the holy grail, is trying to manufacture some of these other apples to make one that can replace the Honeycrisp. Well, now, so what we're seeing though is these branded fruits and vegetables becoming a growing trend.
Right.
So according to a Nielsen study, branded produce accounts for 38.5% of produce sales, and that's up 30% from a few years ago, from 2012. But key thing here, 55% of consumers shop without a brand in mind for produce. And so Nielsen actually suggested that companies can take advantage of that. And so there is a market, or a growing market, to brand produce and to capture consumers for a Pink Lady apple. And that's important because I actually want to take this thing that we've been keeping in the oven.
Oh, yes.
Yes, China.
Baked apple.
Yeah, so our apple pie. China is trademarking things fast. So we have that here. And a key part of that, which I haven't mentioned yet, is that China also happens to be the largest apple producer in the world.
Oh.
So
I didn't know that.
China, look at this. China produces more apples by a factor of 10 than the next largest producer. So the United States produces 4 million. China produces 44 million tons of apples per year.
I didn't realize that.
No,
Isn't it crazy?
I mean, it's
Because you think of apples, you think of Johnny Appleseed, American, you don't.
China's
realize
a
that.
big consumer of apples, specifically red apples, because red is considered a lucky color.
Yeah.
So if we combine the fact that we have, on the one hand, the fastest growth in trademarking in a country, China, combined with the fastest growth in trademarked products, specifically apples, I wouldn't be surprised if we actually start seeing more varieties of new apples coming down the pike for a more segmented, hopefully tastier market.
Segmented.
And I mean, will they travel from China? Do they?
So there is actually, a growing segment of apples being imported from China. We do import apples from China. We also do ship apples to China. So
Yeah.
they're making
Right.
different apples than we're
Well,
making.
here's the thing. I have a suspicion, not knowing anything about the apples beyond what you just told me, that again, honey, they just got really lucky. And like, you know, maybe this guy knew some stuff and he knew this and that, but they just got lucky and they created the best apple ever. And so everyone's like, oh, let's also make our own kind of apples that'll also be good. But maybe this is as good as it gets for apples. And so having new kinds of apples won't necessarily result in more delicious apples. It maybe will result in more expensive apples. But
Well, just wait till the Cosmic Crisp comes out.
see,
Then
I
we'll see.
don't have high expectations.
I'm excited about it.
I think it's going to be local producers.
Yeah.
I don't know if your supermarkets do the same thing, where in some part of Texas they'll just have this type of apple in that supermarket. In this part of Oregon they'll just have that type, and so you just have the regional brands
Yeah.
that go into the store. So these things no one really cares about, but these might be only in one corner of the U.S. and those in another.
Yeah, actually,
That
and
might
that's a
work.
big growing trend is local apples.
and allows you to get back to thinner skinned apples because they're not having to,
Transport them
back
so
to the
far.
trucking episode,
Right, where
truck them across the whole country.
Where I already bruised this apple a little
Right.
bit. Oops. Just in the transportation. Anyway, you guys somewhat a little bit kind of convinced. You convinced a little?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I think this
little bit,
it's,
okay.
it's a little bit, but I think you're going to stay local. I'm not going to buy Chinese apples in the US
What-
or in
what-
the UK either.
What kind of apples do you grow, by the way?
Golden Delicious, Granny Smiths.
like Granny Smiths.
There's crab apples, which are the sort of early small
Yeah,
things.
yeah, yeah.
Well, I make jelly out of those.
Oh, very good.
I'm picking up 200 bottles of apple juice this week, or my wife is, from the apples that we had crushed from our land.
Oh, lovely.
Oh.
So, and we've got the very, very big cooking apples as well.
Oh, yeah, those are
Which,
good.
yeah, they're great. So I've got about 5 or 6 varieties.
Well, I think that's a nice warm and fuzzy note to end on for this fall themed.
Yeah, very autumnal.
Yeah,
Nice
it is our
job.
fall theme knock-on effect. All right, well, that does it for this week's knock-on effect. You can catch us every Thursday at realvision.com/knock-on-effects.
And there you can sign up for your 14-day free trial.
All right, see you guys next week.